Hi, welcome to View from Here. I'm Matt Driskill, live, sort of, in Hong Kong. Today, of course, we're continuing our FCC speaker series, and I have to say it's a very interesting speech indeed. It's Mia Farrow, famous actress and now activist, working to relieve the suffering in Darfur. A little bit more about her in just a minute. Many of you know the Foreign Correspondents Club of Hong Kong. Many of you know it's a key stop on the itinerary of the most well-known people in the world who happen to be passing through the city. The View from Here is pleased to announce we've got the complete, sort of, set of speeches that were given at the FCC in the year 2007, and very much like today's speech, we are uploading those from 2008 as fast as we can. Speakers and topics from 2007 include F.W. de Klerk, former president of South Africa, to Peter Arnett, famous war correspondent, to David Tang, founder of Shanghai Tang. Other topics from 2007 include SARS, the Olympics, Afghanistan, technology, terrorism, India, Pakistan, and, of course, the economies of Asia and the world. The complete 64-part series from 2007, well, we're adding that to the View from Here as fast as we can. You need to check back frequently on viewfromhere.hk. That's View from Here, all one word, .hk. You can download and listen to the latest podcast on your iPod. Complete set of the speeches can also be downloaded in the MP3 format. To do that, you've got to contact me, Matt Driskill, at viewfromhere@netvigator.com. A little bit about today's offering, and I have to tell you, it was a very interesting time for me. It's not often you get a chance to meet a famous actress, and she does a great job for the cause that she has chosen to support. Mia Farrow, she's an actress and a human rights activist. She spoke about the Olympics in China and was trying to help China realize that they could put pressure on the government of Sudan and try to ease the crisis in Darfur. She's traveled to the region 8 times or more to call for an end to the crisis there. She's also the chairwoman of the advisory board of the group, the NGO, Dream for Darfur. To learn more about them, you can go to dreamfordarfur.org. The activist group was recently in the news when it persuaded Steven Spielberg, famous director, of course, persuaded him to withdraw as the artistic director for the Beijing Olympics. She's a high-profile activist for children's rights. She's worked to raise funds and awareness for children in conflict-affected areas, predominantly in Africa. She's also a UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador and has worked extensively to draw attention to the fight to eradicate polio, which she herself suffered as a child. She's published multiple op-ed pieces about the genocide in Darfur, including in the Wall Street Journal and the Los Angeles Times, and she's a frequent public speaker on the topic. To learn more about her, you can go to Mia Farrow, all one word, .org, which focuses on the Darfur crisis. Of course, you don't need me to tell you, she's appeared in more than 40 films, won numerous awards, took off after she landed a starring role in the television series Peyton Place and the famous 1968 film Rosemary's Baby. I had a lot of, not a lot, but I had some very, what do I say? I had some, not trepidation or something like that, but I thought, well, it's going to be very interesting to meet this lady. And I tell you, I thought that maybe she would be getting on a soapbox and trying to tell everybody what to do. Mia Farrow is a good spokeswoman, a good spokesperson for her cause, and she did a great job today. And I think as you listen to the speech, you'll understand exactly what I mean. That's the View from Here. I'm Matt Driskill, live, sort of, in Hong Kong. Stay tuned. The full speech from Mia Farrow at the Foreign Correspondents Club is next.
Cell phones. If you don't, we'll throw you down the stairs. My name's Tom Mitchell. I'm a correspondent governor with the FCC. And first, just a quick note about some other upcoming events at the club. In keeping with our Olympic theme, on Monday, Vincent Haywood will speak about China's first ever Olympic football team, which competed at the 1936 Berlin Games and was comprised mainly of Hong Kong players. On May 20th, Alexandra Harney will be here to talk about her new book, The China Price, The True Cost of Chinese Competitive Advantage. And please finally remember that on May 22nd, the FCC will be holding its annual general meeting. And now for today's speaker. There really isn't very much I can tell you about Mia Farrow's distinguished Hollywood career or her parallel career as a human rights activist that you don't already know. Ms. Farrow has been to the crisis-stricken Darfur region 8 times, at least, and is chairwoman of the advisory board of Dream for Darfur. She's written multiple op-eds on the crisis there for publications, including the Wall Street Journal and the Los Angeles Times, but not yet the Financial Times. I checked our archives this morning. It's an unfortunate omission, which we will have to put right. Hard to believe this is Ms. Farrow's first visit to Hong Kong. We welcome her to our fair city and to the FCC, although for a while there, we weren't sure she was going to make it, especially during a rather nervous 30 minutes at Hong Kong International Airport yesterday. I suspect, however, that brief interlude was really just an excuse for Hong Kong immigration and security officials to seek Ms. Farrow's autograph. I should also tell you that Ms. Farrow was very disappointed to learn that the Hong Kong government reckons her to be less dangerous than a certain Danish sculptor. Ms. Farrow, the microphone is yours.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here before you. It's an honor to be here at all. I truly was unsure as to whether we wouldn't just have a very, very, very long flight and be back in New York. But actually, the Hong Kong authorities were extremely gracious, and they welcomed us, and here I am. The reason for my visit has been well publicized. I've come here to talk about how China, Darfur, and the Olympic Games are inextricably linked. Over the past 5 years, since the government of Sudan launched its campaign of destruction against the civilian population of Darfur, the word Darfur has become synonymous with suffering, and the dying continues. In the last 24 hours, 3 more villages were attacked, sending at least 12,000 people at this moment fleeing for their very lives. Just today, the head of the humanitarian organization Save the Children was shot and killed. So the situation in Darfur is more desperate than ever, and protection is more urgently needed than ever. I wanted to share with you, if we have our technical stuff lined up, some of the photographs I've taken over my 8 trips into the Darfur region. I'm not quite sure how to initiate this. I'll press a button and see what happens. Is that a good philosophy? No, as it turned out. Somebody might help me just get it started. I just press up or down? Yes. Sorry, technically challenged. Never again, clearly. After the Nazi Holocaust, the world vowed never again. How obscenely disingenuous those fine words sound today. You see here the map of Sudan. It is the largest country in Africa. The Darfur region is the darkened region to the west. Note the borders with Chad and Central African Republic. I've spent significant time in both countries, and that borderland is an inferno. A typical village in Darfur. I took this picture in 2004. The village is notable for the fact that it exists. You can see mature fruit trees, walled gardens. There would be animals, and people would be growing crops. Despite the arid soil, it is an agricultural community. People have sustained themselves over centuries through agriculture. Same village, 2006. At this point, 80 to 90% of Darfur's villages are ashes. On the ground, the ashes of the village of Tamanjur. I met Mr. Joseph Omar going through the still smoldering ashes of his village, trying to salvage anything that could be of service to those members of his family that survived the attack, who were actually huddled under a tree a few kilometers away. As you can see, there really wasn't much. This was my first glimpse at what an IDP camp is, an internally displaced persons camp, technically, or refugee camp in its own land. It is really tense, sheeting lashed to the desert floor, not a tree, nor a blade of grass, nor scarcely a shred of hope. The World Food Program delivers sorghum to the camps. Sorghum requires more than 2 hours cooking on an open fire, and therefore firewood has become a kind of currency within the camps. In 2006, I happened to run into a UN assessment team who told me that the deforestation around an average camp was 10 miles. That's June of 2006. Obviously, a great deal further now, meaning a woman must travel or be outside the relative safety of the camp for 20 miles, and during which time she would be exposed to rape, mutilations, abduction, murder. This is Gareda, the largest camp, refugee or IDP camp in the world. 170,000 people live here. It was impossible to capture all of it with my camera. At the time that I took this picture, there were only 7 aid workers working to meet the needs of 170,000 people, mainly women and children. The getting of the wood, the Sophie's choice, who will get the wood today? In this case, an older woman has decided to spare her daughters the journey. And in 2004, I saw a lot of donkeys in Darfur. In 2006, I saw a lot of donkey carcasses. I didn't see donkeys. I don't know if you can see on your screen, in the sky behind the woman is an attack helicopter crossing the skies of Darfur. Is that visible to you? Getting the firewood. I honestly, more times than not, on so many occasions, I simply could not lift the camera to my eye. Women in Darfur, our sisters, wanted to show me the brandings carved into their bodies when they were raped. The tendons sliced, and how they had to hobble now. And in an Islamic culture where the victim of rape is held culpable, where rape is as abhorrent as it is to us, it is 1,000 times worse to a Muslim woman. And yet, during the rapes, breasts burned, fire used to mutilate the women, cuttings, and in this case, carvings. I have to say I felt conflicted sometimes taking the picture, but I also felt that as a witness, I had an obligation. It should not be easy to turn away from such suffering. And the women felt that if I knew what was happening to them, and if I could tell people what was happening to them, maybe somebody would come and do something about it. I wear around my neck, in Darfur, it's called a hijab. In eastern Chad, it's called a grigri. It apparently contains a piece of the Quran. A woman named Halima gave it to me in 2004. She insisted that I have it. I didn't want to take it because she had nothing, but she insisted that I wear it for my protection. I who could offer her no protection. She had been wearing it, she said, when her village was attacked. She had been holding her infant son, who was torn from her arms and bayoneted before her eyes. 3 of her 5 children were similarly killed on that day, and her husband too. Janjaweed, she said. They cut them and threw them into the well. And then Halima clasped my two hands and said, "Tell people what is happening here. Tell them we will all be slaughtered." And if my moral mandate had not been clear before then, it certainly was from that moment on. I tell you Halima's story because it is identical to the stories of the countless women that I've met over my 8 trips into the region. This woman said she was raped by 20 to 30 men who put fire sticks out on her body as they were raping her. The camps. The camps themselves are deplorable. After 5 intolerable years, they have become cauldrons of despair and of rage. The sheeting handed out in 2003 and 2004 is shredded by the relentless sun, by the sandstorms, by the rain in the rainy season. Here in Orakasoni, a refugee camp practically on the Darfur border, people are using their last line of defense, which is the blankets handed out to them by UNHCR. You can see in the foreground on the left a little bit of the original sheeting left. Food and water rations are insufficient. Medical care is minimal to non-existent. Hope is minimal to non-existent. In many camps, the last UNICEF report was actually 7 months ago. An update is pending, the release by the government of Sudan. But on that last UNICEF report, many of the camps, the GAM report, general acute malnutrition, was 30% of the population is suffering from acute malnutrition. We know that it's much greater now because some of you saw the announcement by the World Food Program last week that food rations had been halved, that it is that dangerous that food cannot be brought to the camp by trucks anymore. A WFP worker was killed just last week. The airdrops are unsustainably expensive, and so food rations have been halved, and we can expect to see malnutrition rates, acute malnutrition rates, rising rapidly. Acute malnutrition. It is the under 5s who die first. This is Soraya Adam. She is 27 years old. When her village was attacked, she fled with her 5 children. She explained that they had to leave without any preparation, without food, without water, without anything. They ran. She gathered her children and they ran for their lives. She never saw her husband again, but on the long journey, 22 days they walked, she said along the way someone told her there was a country called Chad. And she kept asking people, is there a country called Chad? Can you tell me where to go? It took her 22 days to reach the Orakasoni refugee camp in Chad. 2 of the children died on the journey. To me, the face of Soraya Adam, I don't know, it seems like, can we dim the lights there so that you could perhaps see a little more clearly? Is that a possibility or no? It would be worth it. Could you? It's really the one near the picture. Because to me, Soraya represents. In her face is all the suffering that defines Darfur. The account of the attacks on the villages are numbingly similar. Without warning, attack helicopters and bombers fill the morning skies, raining bombs upon families as they sleep, as they pray, as they're going out to their fields, as they're preparing their breakfast. These drawings actually were given to me by children in what are called child-friendly spaces, where aid workers try to provide some sense of normalcy for the children, They give them felt tips and colored pencils to draw. They can draw whatever they like, and very often they draw the day that changed their lives. Here a child drew her mother cooking breakfast. The child said that was her running and machine gun shooting. The aerial attacks are inevitably followed by ground attacks by Arab militia who have come to be known as Janjaweed, which translates pretty much as evil or devils on horseback. They work in tandem with the government of Sudan. Government of Sudan kept its military, its ground forces deliberately weak. They came to power by coup, and so when they began their assault on the population of Darfur, they enlisted the help of their Arab brethren who have come to be known as Janjaweed, who are the ground forces that follow the aerial attacks. So here we see more of the attacks. This child drew her mother, and inside the woman is the fetus, killed by an attack helicopter. In this complex drawing, we see the only picture I have of an actual rape in the lower left-hand corner. People fleeing, people begging for mercy, people gathering their children. One can scarcely imagine the kind of terror when suddenly the morning skies fill with bombers, and for no known reason, suddenly everything is on fire, and then in come Janjaweed on horseback and on camels, shouting racial epithets and shooting people as they run, the elderly, the children. No one is spared. The terror is unimaginable. It is a traumatized population. This woman showed me the wound in her back. She was running for her life. Her baby was tied to her back, and as she ran, she was shot in the back. The bullet passed through the baby, killing the child. But the wound she weeps for, she said, is the wound in her heart, of course. I was in Eastern Chad in November 2006, a terrible month for the people of Eastern Chad, when Darfur's Janjaweed entered Eastern Chad and 60 villages were destroyed. Darfur's Janjaweed joined with Chadian Arab tribes to destroy countless people. Thousands died and were mutilated. Behind these children was a village on fire. People fleeing from their burned village with whatever they could carry on their back. You see little clusters of people like this. Some have some form of shelter, but no safety. Others have less. In this case, this group didn't even have mats to sit on. The people of Darfur have been, and they continue to be, slaughtered, yes, but they are also dying of disease and of hunger. In the camps, the women die of humiliation and shame. They despair that they will never return to their homelands. They despair because their losses are too numerous to count or ever reclaim. This woman, her 3 children were thrown alive into her own burning home. She was sitting beneath a tree where I found her, empty of tears. This older woman was taking care of a cluster of children. They were not her children, she said, but she would care for them. To me, this is a picture of grief. An older woman sobbing beneath a tree. Her village was destroyed. Loved ones were killed, and I just held her in my arms, and she sobbed. This is actually SLA Mini Manawi. In 2006, the single signator of the Darfur Peace Agreement had by that time joined with the Janjaweed and government of Sudan in committing the same kinds of atrocities. Very dangerous players in a very dangerous terrain. Janjaweed, actually. This is apparently an unusual photograph for obvious reasons. Not many people, I suppose, stand in the path. But I felt then, too, this will be denied. The government of Sudan is denying that this is happening to the civilian population of Darfur. And I felt it important to take the picture because this is what the people of Darfur are facing on a daily basis. Janjaweed. And in this case, rocket-propelled grenades. It's Janjaweed. In the tiny border town of Gazbeda, and there were only six rooms in the hospital, and one doctor struggling to meet the needs of perhaps 1,000 people. The wounded poured out across the desert floor, and in those few beds, I saw 3 men lying side by side, their eyes cut out by Janjaweed knives. The savagery of the attacks is beyond description. This child he stood with his elders with his bow and arrow to defend his village, but his bow and arrow was no match for the machine guns that tore through his chest. When I came back at nightfall, I was relieved to hear that he had died because there was nothing for his pain. The child was in agony. The children. I think their faces speak more eloquently than I possibly could. No food, 9 days, he said. At the end of a day, I had filled my empty bottle with what the children were sucking from the ground. This little girl is one of too many child-headed households in the IDP and refugee camps across Darfur and eastern Chad. She now claims to be the mother of her baby sister. She was quite defiant, you can see it in her face, and quite determined. She said, "No harm will come to my baby." But the baby has not uttered a single sound since the day of the attacks, the day that their parents were killed and their village was torched. It is, again, I cannot emphasize strongly enough how traumatized the people are. This little girl, her parents were killed the day before. A dying child. Child of hope, I call this. Some of you may know that I have many children myself, and we are not, for the most part, related by blood, but by something far more important, by the deepest commitment and love. And I've told my children that we are part of a larger human family. And when one of us is suffering, we all suffer. And when we turn away, we are surely diminished in the most essential way. This is our child. This child is my screensaver on my laptop, and perhaps my soul saver. Child of hope, I call it. I don't know if she is alive today. I took this in 2004, even above the desperate need for water and food and the plea for education. It's on the left-hand side of the screen. The plea for protection is what reverberates in my heart. From every village and every camp I visited, people were begging for protection, and I don't think there can be a more visceral plea from the human heart than protect us. But 2004 is a long time ago, and no real protection has come to the people of Darfur. These are the victims of our indifference. What message, after 5 long years, have we sent to Darfur's people? Only that they are completely dispensable. Later this month, I will return to the region. I will listen as people tell me their stories. I will write down every word. Again, I will promise them that I will indeed tell the world what is happening to them. I will take more photographs, and then somehow I will leave them there in that hell and return to a largely indifferent world. What is required now and for future genocides is the will of the international community to accept its responsibility to protect those civilians threatened by genocide, ethnic cleansing, and crimes against humanity. A responsibility unanimously accepted by the United Nations in 2005, but words proving to be as hollow as never again. And I cannot conclude without coming to the issue of China. Beijing is singularly positioned to persuade Khartoum to cease the regime's assaults upon Darfur's population. Chinese oil revenues, which now top $2 billion a year, have been used by the Sudanese government to purchase attack helicopters, bombers, and of course the steady flow of arms and ammunition, all used against the civilians in Darfur. Over the past year, China has taken a few positive steps to address the ongoing atrocities in Darfur. They appointed a special envoy to Darfur, and even more significantly, China did vote for the new UN resolution last July, the latest UN resolution, 1769, which authorized the deployment of 26,000 peacekeepers to the Darfur region. They have also sent engineers to Darfur, and they have encouraged Sudan to accept the peacekeepers. But tragically, nothing has changed the grim realities for the people on the ground in Darfur, the anguished people of Darfur, nor for the aid workers who are struggling to sustain them. Tragically, today we hear that the head of Save the Children was shot this day or last night and killed. Ironically, when Special Envoy Louis Guijing was in Khartoum in February, urging the Sudanese government to be more flexible on some unresolved issues, that was the quote, and a very welcome one it was. Khartoum's armies and militias were bombing villages and attacking civilians in West Darfur, sending thousands fleeing. I believe 13,000 fled into Chad alone, and hundreds of children, UNICEF reports, are missing. Boy children, some 300 boy children disappeared. I guess we will find their bones one day. No one is able to count the dead in Darfur. For years, the UN fixed the figure at 200,000, and more recently they moved it up to 300,000. But the truth is, no one knows how many thousands have died in Darfur. Sudan expert Eric Reeves puts that figure at well over 500,000. All the more appalling that we cannot, with any credibility, count the dead. In the 10 long months since the passage of UN Resolution 1769, the Sudanese regime has placed every conceivable obstacle in the path of the deployment, the full and effective deployment of that force. A scant 9,000 peacekeepers are now on the ground, scarcely able to protect themselves, let alone Darfur's people or the aid workers. The international community has failed to provide the framework for the operation, transportation and logistical support that is essential for the peacekeepers to do their jobs. 5 years of terror is way too long. It is past time for the full protection force to be deployed. The members of the Security Council should no longer tolerate Khartoum's obstructions. We urge China to assume leadership and to call immediately for a Security Council meeting to launch a partnering initiative. Many African nations lack the capabilities to accomplish the mission in Darfur. There is a way to address this. We are suggesting that nations with capable armies step forward to partner with those African battalions needing assistance, providing them with the crucial logistical support, training, trucks, and of course, the much talked about helicopters that no nation has coughed up thus far. China, the UK, the United States, France, Russia, all must work together to make sure this happens. It is within China's considerable power to alter the course of history. In a gesture that befits the Olympic host, China introduced a resolution last October at the United Nations calling for an honoring of the Olympic truce, a period of peace before, during, and after the Games. It is a tradition that dates back to ancient Greece, and it is reaffirmed every 4 years. The UN resolution, which passed unanimously, urges all nations to use sport, this is a quote, use sport as an instrument to promote peace, dialogue, and reconciliation in areas of conflict during and beyond the Olympic Games, end of quote. The People's Republic of China must be commended for reminding the world of the spirit, values, and principles represented in the Olympic Games. We now ask China to implement that truce and bring peace to the people of Darfur before the 2008 Games begin. Beijing has expressed its commitment to the concept of a harmonious global society, one world, one dream. The people of Darfur have dreams too. They dream of peace. They dream of safety. They dream of returning to their homelands. Toward this end, we initiated a campaign last September, actually last summer, and we called it Dream for Darfur. Our purpose has been to urge Beijing to use its considerable power and its unique point of leverage to bring the Olympic dream to Darfur. We ask, how can China host the Olympic Games at home while underwriting genocide in Darfur? On August 9, 2007, 1 year from the commencement of the Games, we launched our own symbolic torch relay on the Chad-Darfur border to honor all those who had been lost, to celebrate the courage of those who survive, and to reaffirm the commitment we all share for an end to genocide everywhere. We then held torch lighting ceremonies in Rwanda, Armenia, Bosnia, Germany, and Cambodia, communities that have experienced genocide. In each location, survivors, hundreds of survivors, in ceremonies of their own, expressed solidarity with the people of Darfur and called on China to bring an end to the suffering in Western Darfur. We have for you here a short video of these ceremonies. We have a flame. This flame represents, it honors all those who have been lost and all those who still suffer. This flame celebrates the courage of those who survive.
هذا الفيلم يعني يمثل عن فجاءة الذين يعيشون.
And this flame represents the hope we all share.
وهذا الفيلم يمثل عن حلم الذين يعيشون.
For an end to the violence and a safe return home.
abantu bagera ku bihumbi 25 bashyinguye kuri uyu musozi baraturutse.
At this very site is buried 25,000 people. Those among those people who were at the Eto, the school where we started, and there they were abandoned by the UN forces to be slaughtered by the Interam.
of an organization called Dream for Darfur, and we are trying to urge all governments, but especially the government of China, to take all steps necessary to end the violence and bring security to Darfur.
Diese Flamme würdigt die Stärke jener, die überlebten. Und diese Flamme symbolisiert unser aller Hoffnung auf ein Ende aller Genozide überall.
The stones here tell the dark story of the Holocaust. This memorial speaks of the collective failure of the world to respond to genocide. Incomprehensibly, more than 5 years have passed since the government of Sudan and its proxy killers, Arab militia known as Janjaweed, launched their campaign of destruction upon the non-Arab population of Darfur. So today, in Hong Kong, we will end our symbolic torch relay. After the question and answer period, we will let you know where we are going to light our torch, and all of you are invited to join us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Ms. Farrow, of course, is happy to take some of your questions. Maybe I could just kick it off by asking whether or not you've had the opportunity to present the same sort of information we've seen today to Chinese government officials, and also about something, why do you believe confronting the Chinese government in this manner is using the Olympics as an effective way to accomplish your goals there?
We have spoken to some Chinese officials, but really to no avail. They received us courteously in New York. Jill Sabat, director of Dream for Darfur, is here in the room, and she met with more than I did. Maybe you would like to answer that.
We have a microphone.
What was the second part of your question again?
We've met sometimes together, Mia and I, and sometimes with other members of our coalition and organization, 6 times since last September with the senior Chinese officials. They're always very kind, very diplomatic, but urge us to stop what we're doing, saying that they don't like demonstrations, what we're doing offends the Chinese people, that China has done what it can, and China has led the international community to the extent that it will.
They said it's not fair.
Also that it's not fair to link China to Darfur. That's a comment. And we would have the same conversation just about every time that we met with them. But they were long meetings. We met with the U.S. ambassador to China as well.
And they were always so very sweet.
Very gracious.
It's a very funny thing. I had my laptop and I was showing them the photographs I just showed to you, and because they have chairs that lined the walls, that you couldn't really get in front of them. So I'm not even thinking. I just set my laptop up and got on the ground on my hands and knees so I could show it to, was it the ambassador? What was I think? Ambassador, consul. And then he got down on his knees. You just can't get on your knees. A woman getting on her knees, he felt he had to get, everybody in the room was getting down on their knees. It was like a cartoon. I quickly got up off my knees. And they were extremely nice, and the consul said, "Well, why don't you show what good things we're doing in Darfur? We had put in a well, I think, And I said, well, you know, here in America, when something is wrong with our car and we take it to the mechanic, we don't say what's right with our car. We say what's wrong with our car. And of course, he brought up Iraq for us, and I said, let's not even waste time on that. You know, I'm with you on that. You know, I could sit here agreeing with you on that. But let's talk about Darfur. So, you know, we didn't make a lot of progress in our meetings. And why? You said why?
Is this effective?
Yes, is it effective?
Well, when my son and I wrote a piece for the Wall Street Journal in April of 2007, nothing was happening. And China experts all said, you know, China is impervious to criticism, and if you begin criticizing, you will only go backward. And I said, well, we can't go backward because we're already back as far as we could go where it comes to Darfur. So we wrote this piece, and it was entitled Genocide Olympics. And within days of the piece, I'm not sure how many, it appeared, by the way, in the Wall Street Journal. Within days of the piece, there was a piece about the piece in another publication, the New York Times, on the front page. There had been so much activity since the piece. The envoy had been appointed, press rooms had been hired, statements had been made. There seemed a flurry of action and potential, the way I saw it. And sure enough, in July, this most welcome signing of the resolution to provide peacekeepers. So I would say progress has been made. Maybe I'm not the most tactful person. I'm blunt. I'm straightforward, but I'm not a liar. And I think I wasn't wrong. And if you look at those pieces, I don't think they were disrespectful. They called upon China to make the slogan "One World, One Dream" a reality, and to make the Olympic Games an occasion, a true occasion for celebration for the world.
How do you do? I'm Bonnie Engel, Governor of the FCC. Ms. Farrow, as a fellow American, I would like to ask you if you've also approached the American government to help you?
Yes, indeed. We're in touch. We have this government now. President Bush has been interesting on Darfur. There's been a tremendous. We are the largest donors for the aid operation, which is the largest aid operation in the world. We're now sustaining more than 3 million people. President Bush, well, it was actually Colin Powell, who first determined that genocide was ongoing back in 2004, in September of 2004, and President Bush has repeated that several times, including at the Security Council in the presence of Omar al-Bashir, and they literally were laughing. I don't know if any of you saw that televised at the United Nations, and I'm sure they laughed all the way back to Khartoum because they knew we weren't going to do anything. The U.S. government, we all know, after having Somaliitis, now has Iraqitis. We have no stomach to actually put boots on the ground anywhere else, and I wouldn't differ with that right now, except to say, just on a personal note, I'm a pacifist, and I would ring the camps myself with my children in their wheelchairs and with their canes, all of them with their disabilities, if I could, to protect the civilians and the aid workers in Darfur. I would. So that I would consider, yes, I would send my sons, my daughters, and I would do that myself. But that's not going to happen from America. But we do have an idea that we think is a viable one, that those militarily capable nations, the UK actually assumes leadership of the Security Council, has already come May 1st. And there is precedent for those countries who come into leadership of the Security Council to have a pet project. For Richard Holbrooke, it was AIDS in Africa. And we're going to ask the UK to make their project the deployment of UNIMID. But we had an idea that was a partnering proposition where militarily capable nations could go. Let me backtrack for a moment. The government of Sudan has somehow, in the wording of the document, Resolution 1769, it specified that the troops should be predominantly of African origin. And somehow that idea has been twisted into exclusively African, which is not the same thing at all. And people have settled somehow thus far for that. Moving forward on that, what if militarily capable nations would partner with, almost adopt a battalion, and provide it with that battalion, an African battalion, with training, logistical support, and helicopters, so that they could go into Darfur as part of UNIMID and be equipped and capable. I think that's a viable proposition.
Let's take some questions from the floor. Right there, please. And please identify yourself.
Douglas Wong from Bloomberg. How do you think your approach to pressuring China on this issue differs from the approach of the pro-Tibetan independence protesters? And do you think that China responds better to your approach, or if there is a different approach?
I think I envisioned when I wrote the piece with my son more than a year ago, the run up to the Olympics as a window of opportunity to use pressure on China. Maybe that's too crude a word, but to try to persuade China. Darfur, for China, is relatively low-hanging fruit compared to some other issues. If our ask of China is two things: persuade Khartoum to stop attacking civilians, persuade Khartoum to admit the full deployment of the 26,000 peacekeepers, keeping in mind that China headed the Security Council when that resolution was passed and indeed signed on to that resolution. So to implement that resolution, that, it seems to me, is a doable thing for the People's Republic of China, a powerful nation. So when we saw that window of opportunity, it was not surprising at all when other groups entered that window. And so we see the immense frustration of the people of Tibet in their long struggle now expressing itself. I'm not here to talk about Tibet. I'm not a Tibet expert, and just on a personal note, I would just say that I empathize with the people of Tibet.
Thank you. There's a question in the corner here.
Thank you, Ms. Farrow. My name is Aladdin. I'm the Consul General of Saudi Arabia here in Hong Kong. There is a lot of areas around the world which are suffering as much as Darfur. And Darfur, I think, is the world responsibility, not only China, it's the United States, the Arab world, and so on. But there is also another area which has been suffering not only for 5 years, but for 50 years, which is called Palestine and the Palestinians and the Israelis. And the main country and power in the world which is helping Israel and doing that is the United States and supporting it. Why can't you do something about them too?
Sir, thank you. I'm an actress. I'm a mother. I'm a grandmother. I would love to solve all the problems of the world, wouldn't we all? I don't have that in my power. I was and am a UNICEF ambassador. None of us feel good when we think back to Rwanda and how every nation of the world failed Rwanda. The United Nations failed Rwanda. My country failed Rwanda. Your country failed. We all failed the people of Rwanda. And so over the course of 90 days, almost 100 people were slaughtered. Now I hear it was 2004 on the 10th anniversary of the Rwandan genocide. I'm reading the New York Times, and I read about a country, a region of a country, a region I never heard of in the country of Sudan, somewhere called Darfur. Apparently another genocide was unfolding. And it was, for me, one of those knee-buckling moments where I felt, on this occasion, I will not do nothing. You know, I Googled what were we doing during the Rwandan genocide? What was the press doing? Why did I not know? Well, it turned out the press, my country was watching the O.J. Simpson murder trial while 1 million people were butchered. And so I felt, again, beneath the mainstream media radar, another genocide was unfolding. So I got myself to Darfur. And from that time on, really it changed the way I needed to lead my life. I tried to process what I had seen and what was my moral obligation as a human being. I'm an actress. I concluded that my moral obligation was for me to do my utmost to bring an end to what I had witnessed. Now I am daily discovering what my utmost is, and my focus remains on that region. You are right. It is a world of troubles. We have not handled our earth very well, our interpersonal relationships, our intercountry relationships. If I, as a mother of my 14 children, handle things the way the governments of the world are handling things, my family would be in ruin, you know? So I don't know what to do about the 50 years of conflict. I don't know what to do about a lot of things, but I do have some suggestions about Darfur. Thank you.
Microphone in the corner again. Way in the corner.
Thank you. My name is Florence de Changy. I report for the French newspaper Le Monde and the French National Radio. Ms. Farrow, could you elaborate a little bit more on the opportunity for you to be here today in Hong Kong while the Olympic flame is in town? Just tell us a bit more about that. And also, have you got any plans, or have you also tried to go and do this presentation in China? And if not, why not?
To do what in China?
This presentation to the Foreign Correspondent Club in China.
I am in China.
Okay.
No?
I'm in mainland China.
Okay. The opportunity to be here, as I said earlier, it is an honor to be here, and confidence is almost always misplaced. I certainly was not confident that I would be sitting with you today, and so I'm delighted that happened, and I realize it's serendipitous. It was most gracious of immigration and of the city of Hong Kong to permit me to be here. As far as going further in China, you know, I'm going to be in one of the camps, in one of the refugee camps, broadcasting live during the games. And we have a switch over campaign, which we're about to announce, that during the commercial breaks, that we would ask people to switch the channel where we feel the people of Darfur should be heard, since they cannot participate attend, or even watch the games. I think it's a great opportunity for viewing audiences to see what life is like in the camps, and let's hear from the people of Darfur. We also have an alternative in plan for the opening ceremonies, where we're going to ask recording artists of repute to give us one song for Darfur. And while we boycott the opening ceremonies, unless security comes for Darfur, we will ask people to, perhaps they would like to hear some of their favorite recording artists give one song for Darfur alternative.
Any questions from other areas of the room? In the back corner, please. In the far back corner, there you go. Yep.
Shout it out, yeah.
Card for the Olympic sponsors, and I believe there was a follow-up to that. Are you satisfied in any way with the responses that you've had from the Olympic sponsors? And what can we as the media do to to bring more pressure upon them?
Call them. Their contact points are on my website, miafarrow.org, or Dream for Darfur. No, 16 out of 19 flunked. Those that passed were McDonald's, Volkswagen, was it? No. Adidas and what was it? And Kodak. And the rest, history will note their silence in these games. Pardon? Okay. Let's see. We've got Coca-Cola, Visa, General Electric, Volkswagen, Samsung. Yeah. And Coca-Cola has a history of supporting. They were sponsors of the 1936 Olympics, and they were lined up to sponsor the 1940 Olympics, which I don't know if you know, that the IOC awarded the 1940 Olympics to Berlin, to Germany. The games didn't happen because of the war, but this is after Kristallnacht, this is after Mein Kampf, this is after everybody knew what the Nazi agenda was, and the IOC awarded the 1940 Games Winter Olympics to Germany. I don't know if you knew that. I thought that was kind of interesting. And Coca-Cola, of course, was signed on to be the sponsors. So I don't know. I'm disgusted. Earlier on, I was saying they should take their business elsewhere. They should take their billions elsewhere. Surely they have a better way to make a billion than that. And then we started trying to be sensitive. And so we listened to them about what was their sphere of comfort. And then they all said, well, the United Nations, this is something for the United Nations to do, not us. So we said, well, okay, why not then get together and write a letter to the United Nations urging them, because their combined wealth is more than the wealth of many nations, write to the United Nations, write to the P5, ask them to align themselves behind the resolution to provide peacekeepers. And that they refused to do. They refused to do that, even that. And they could choose their own words. We said, because they all have trade agreements with China, I understand, sensitive. So we said, choose your own words. Praise China. China was head of the Security Council during that resolution. Say, where is the rest of the world supporting China's amazing resolution? Surely you can find the words to make it laudatory of China. You won't lose your whatever. But they wouldn't even do that. Cowards. I'd say this is about fear and greed, the sponsors.
We have to be mindful of time, but I think we can get in another question or two before Ms. Farrow tells us what her next activity is. Sorry, there's one first in the very back, Tom Holland, and then right here.
Thank you, Ms. Farrow. My name's Tom Holland from the South.
Where are you, Tom?
Out on the in exile over here.
Oh, okay.
Tell me, please, in slightly under 9 months' time, the United States will have a new president and a new administration.
I'm counting the minutes.
I assume you've had contact with the different campaigns and the different candidates. Tell me, have you had any indications that there would be a radically different policy, both on Darfur and indeed on China's support for Sudan from any of the candidates?
And indeed on everything. Absolutely. Even my lampshade would do better. But yes, all the presidential candidates have expressed their thoughts on Darfur, and I believe there will be a change. We hope that the incoming government will make Darfur a top-tier issue. And really, of course, ultimately the solution lies at a conference table, and we need a full support for a comprehensive peace agreement. We talk about there's many areas to push on, and that, of course, is one not to be ignored. Also, looking at the whole picture, let us not forget our aid workers. the bravest people on earth who are doing what the world has turned away from, sustaining these fragile lives in Darfur. You know, thoughts with Save the Children director who was killed, but so many aid workers have been killed now. I mean, a couple of dozen. Many are missing. More than 30 are missing. Very, very difficult, and yet they do it day after day for a pittance, far from their family, from their friends, difficult circumstances, mostly can't even get to email, let alone electricity even comes and goes. Very, very difficult circumstances and traumatic ones for the aid workers, so remember them too. And we have a lot of press in this room. I still, the reason I started my website and my blog is because I had to scour the internet for information on Darfur. It would be great if the press would make, I don't know what constitutes how people call news news. If it's one missing white girl on an island, sure, tragedy for that family, but is that the headline grabbing news for months and months? Shouldn't news be directly related to the amount of people involved? I don't know. I think somebody should rearrange things, because I'm still having to scour the internet for any news on Darfur that affects thousands of people. Am I the only one that knew that 13,000 people fled for their lives yesterday? You know, so I put it on my website because I think somebody like me might be looking and might not have the time to scour the internet for news. So I think not to be critical, especially to my hosts here in this, but I do feel that Darfur and the tragedy that is unfolding there, if I could bring you all there, I assure you it would become a top priority.
Consider it noted. We had a last question right here.
Thanks. Tony Samai from ATV News. I just want to know what you think of people who call for a full-scale boycott of the Olympics or a partial boycott of the Olympics as a way to pressure China over Darfur or of any other issue as well.
By partial boycott, are you
Like
talking
the
about
opening
the opening
ceremony,
ceremonies?
yeah.
Well, that would be me.
A full-scale boycott? Say
No, a boycott of the opening ceremonies, because that would not hurt our athletes. I think it, for our leaders to refuse to attend the opening ceremonies would send a clear signal to Beijing that their policy on certain issues is simply not acceptable. It is a way to make that clear.
Ms. Farrow, would you like to tell us what you're going to be doing this afternoon?
This afternoon? Oh, well, of course, yes.
Your mystery agenda.
I'm not going to keep it. Yes, it was a mystery agenda. But we're going actually to have our final torch lighting ceremony. And I have something written which I probably can't find. But we're going to tell you where it is. And then I wanted to invite anyone who wants to join to come with us. We have 3 cars. And we have a lot of people. So I'm not sure. A 200-yard walk from here. And we're going to have our final torch lighting ceremony. And anyone is welcome to join us who wants to come.
Do you want me to say where it is?
Yeah, say where it is,
It's
please.
at 20 Lower Albert Road. It's at the Central Government Office Building, the East Wing, near the St. John's Cathedral. We're going to light a torch in about 25 minutes in front of that building.
How come not now?
Because we have to get there.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't happen unless you're there, so...
I think patience is the most overrated virtue, don't you?
So we're off to go there.
Okay, on that note, I'd like to thank Ms. Farrow for a very powerful and engaging presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
A little token of appreciation.
Thanks. Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much.